Greetings all, Ferrari Man 601 here. Welcome back to another Formula One roundup video, I suppose. Podcast video, whatever you want to call these things. Here it is. And we're talking about round one of the 2022 Formula One World Championship, the Bahrain Grand Prix. We looked at qualifying yesterday, and we were pretty dumbfounded at the results, in that they were so different from what we've been used to seeing for the last 8 years or so since 2014, beginning of the turbo hybrid era, and the beginning of pretty much uncontested to date Mercedes dominance. However, the result today in the Grand Prix very much appears to indicate that those days are over. What can I say? We have a 1-2 finish for a team that has not been anywhere near scoring consistent 1-2 finishes in the last 8 years, and that team, of course, is Ferrari. Charles Leclerc leading teammate Carlos Sainz across the line to score the first doppietta for Ferrari since the 2019 Singapore Grand Prix, which also happened to be the last Ferrari victory to date. It's been a very long time coming, but Ferrari are once again on top of the world, drawing first blood in 2022 and doing it in the most productive way possible, scoring a 1-2 finish. That is absolutely unbelievable, and it's a fantastic result for everybody, not just Ferrari fans who have been sitting in the doldrums for the last 14 years, but for the sport in general. I think pretty much everybody has been tired of uncontested dominance by one team, and at this point I think they would be willing to welcome uncontested dominance by any other team, provided that it is not Mercedes, simply for the variety. We're definitely going to get some variety this year. However, to say that this race was just a 1-2 finish by Ferrari and leave it there, that would not be telling the entire story by any stretch of the imagination. This was one of the more eventful Grand Prix that I can remember for quite some time. And it's not simply because of where the cars finished, it's how they got there in some cases, and it's how they didn't get there in some other cases. Initially, everybody got off the line very well, and we had not a quiet race by any means, but we did have a rather standard one in terms of attrition. We didn't really see a whole lot of attrition for most of the day, which was to me quite surprising considering that this is a brand new type of race car. And for some of the teams, it represents the longest single run that they have had to this point. So a lot of unknowns here, but the reliability up to the end here in the last 10 laps was really good. Everybody was still running up to about 12, 11 laps to go. However, before we get into what ended this Grand Prix, we've got to get into what we saw in the opening stages here. In particular, we saw a fantastic battle for the lead between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen after the first pit stops. When we had the first round of pit stops, Verstappen stops first to try and undercut Charles Leclerc, who stays out 1 lap or maybe 2 laps longer. He comes in, and Ferrari got that gap judged just right. Leclerc comes out ahead of Verstappen, but only just, and he remained within DRS striking distance of Verstappen for another couple of laps, which Verstappen used to great effect. DRS on these cars, there has been some debate as to how powerful it may be. What we've been seeing in testing and what we've been seeing up and down the field, it's a little bit inconclusive. However, the situation between the Red Bull and the Ferrari definitely seems to indicate that DRS can be very powerful. The straight line speed differentials down the start-finish straight were in excess of 20 miles per hour. That's the speed limit in a lot of American neighborhoods. So that is a significant speed differential that you can get via the use of DRS if you happen to be in a Red Bull and you're against a Ferrari. Results may vary somewhat depending on how cars are set up and what your trims are for a different circuit. But that was interesting, and we had Verstappen and Leclerc trading position there momentarily, but trading the position nonetheless for the lead for about 3-4 laps there before Verstappen overcooked it into braking for turn 1, and he had to back out for the sake of his brake integrity. Leclerc, therefore, was able to pull out a lead once again, and he retained that lead through his second pit stop. It appeared that we were going to see a reasonably procession to the end. However, with about 12, 11 laps to go, we had the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly give up, and he was the first retirement of the day. Interesting to see it. The car just switched itself off as he was exiting turn number 2, and it entirely switched itself off. It wasn't just a simple case of the engine cutting out. The car was dead. Electrical system out and everything. He had no more clutch control, no gear shift control, and he just ground to a stop, stuck in what I believe was 4th gear there. So he jumps out of the turn 2, turn 3 barriers there, and he's absolutely fine. A little bit of a flash fire out the back, which could be indicative of a hydraulic leak. It appeared to be some sort of an oil-type fire, but Pierre Gasly okay, and the marshals soon extinguished that fire. However, that stricken AlphaTauri was in a position where it could not be wheeled behind a barrier too easily, so that required marshals to get out onto the circuit and for a tractor to get out onto the circuit, which necessitated the deployment of the safety car. This then played into Ferrari's hands strategically because Max Verstappen had pitted for soft tires a couple laps prior. Leclerc had stayed out, and it was their intention to squeak those tires out through to the end. That would have been okay. But, as we learned in Abu Dhabi last year, if you stay out on old tires toward the end of the race and the guy behind you just pitted for fresher ones, that's not going to end very well for you. So Leclerc jumps into the pits at Ferrari's behest, and they fit fresh, soft tires onto his car as well. So Verstappen and Leclerc now on equal equipment in terms of tires for the eventual safety car restart. What also happened, though, during that safety car period, immediately after the field... They joined up behind the safety car, and immediately afterward, Max Verstappen gets on the radio and says, "Hey, I got some sort of issue here with my steering. It feels strange, and power steering doesn't feel right." So Red Bull go through their telemetry, and they see some sort of a problem. We're still not entirely sure what the problem was, but they said it wasn't something terminal, but it neither was something that they could work on while the car's out on track. So either you pit and we lose a whole bunch of positions, we try to fix it, or you stick it out to the end. We've only got a handful of laps to go. So Verstappen says, "Sure, I'll stick it out to the end, but it feels really strange. I don't like it." Safety car period continues. Verstappen continues to radio problems back to the pits regarding that power steering situation. At some point, it appeared that he had entirely lost power steering. Initially, it had appeared that it was just inconsistently giving him assistance, but at some point, it appears to have dropped out entirely. Not entirely sure what the problem actually was on that Red Bull. But when we got to the safety car restart, we could assume that Max Verstappen had no power steering. At the same time, his pace was beginning to suffer. We resumed racing after the safety car period. Leclerc nailed the restart absolutely perfectly. However, Verstappen was starting to fall back. The gap started to increase rather quickly and rather significantly, but he was still holding position for the time being, was Verstappen. However, only a handful of laps to go. The Red Bull apparently started to give it up in a big way, and Verstappen immediately fell into the clutches of Carlos Sainz, and then his teammate Sergio Perez, Lewis Hamilton also passing Verstappen as the Red Bull gave up. As he rounded the final corner, the engine switched off. The electric stayed on this time, but the engine switched off. The car became stuck in gear. It went into anti-stall before it lost hydraulic pressure, though, so Verstappen was able to coast it into the pit lane. But that was 2 cars out of the race at this point, and 2 Red Bull-associated cars at that, with 2 Red Bull power units in them. They're the Honda power units still, but they're badged as Red Bull powertrains nowadays. So 2 failures on 2 Red Bull cars. Real interesting. This does not bring out the safety car, but it does then release Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton to get after each other. Hamilton is immediately behind Perez here in the closing laps of the race. On the final lap, Sergio Perez, he had been radioing to the pits for a couple of laps prior saying that, "Hey, I feel like I'm losing power now." He didn't describe the steering issues that Verstappen did, but he did note a loss of power, and the team were saying, "Yeah, we see it. There's not much we can do about it." Trying to exit turn 1 on the final lap, Perez, he got his braking and downshifts done, but the rear axle locked up, around the car went, engine stalls immediately, and Perez is stranded there on the apex of turn 1 out of the race. It's the final lap. The field made it through the area with no incident, no safety car required. However, Perez was out of the race. Lewis Hamilton, the immediate beneficiary thereof, he managed to go up into 3rd place by passing the stricken Perez. So somehow today, amid all of the problems that we were talking about with Mercedes after qualifying, Mercedes finishes on the podium. However, it was due to misfortunes of their rivals rather than raw pace. However, Reliability means a lot, and if you're not going to finish, you may as well not start. So no points today for Red Bull, maximum points for Ferrari, and Mercedes, a conciliatory third and fourth by Hamilton and Russell, respectively. The final results, though, in total, what do we have? We have got, of course, victory and 26 points, because he also got fastest lap, to Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari with a total elapsed time of 1 hour, 37 minutes, 33.584 seconds. In second, his teammate Carlos Sainz scoring 18 points, 5.598 seconds back from Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton rounding out our podium finishers in 15th, with 15 points, 9.675 seconds back. George Russell, Hamilton's teammate and the debutant Mercedes driver, in fourth place, scoring 12 points, 11.211 seconds behind from the race winner. Kevin Magnussen for Haas, a brilliant fifth place. He started seventh. He made up 2 positions, courtesy of the retirements ahead of him. Yes, he was running fifth, honestly, early on in the race. However, the Haas did see a little bit of a drawback in its pace as the stint unfolded. We were wondering whether or not that would happen. Apparently did happen, but Magnussen still a brilliant return to Formula One, and this Haas car is good. Similarly, immediately behind Magnussen, P6 for Valtteri Bottas. He had a bad start, and he didn't really make too many waves throughout the day, but again, he was running at the end when some of his rivals were not, and he scores 8 points, finishing 6th. Not bad. Esteban Ocon in the first of the Alpines in P7, scoring 6 cool points. Yuki Tsunoda in P8, scoring 4 points. So the second AlphaTauri did manage to finish the race. His teammate, of course, retired. P9 for Fernando Alonso, scoring 2 points in the second Alpine. And Guan Yu Zhou in P10, scoring 1 point on his Formula One debut for Alfa Romeo. Really cool. So we've got double points finishes here up and down the field. Double points for Alfa Romeo, double points for Mercedes, double points for Ferrari, double points for Alpine. So that's really interesting. And the story immediately outside the points is also interesting. We got Kevin Magnussen finishing in 5th, Mick Schumacher finishing in 11th, just 1 spot out of the points. Could he have been 10th? Yeah, pretty easily he could have been 10th as well. The gap at the end doesn't really speak to the relative performance between the Alfa Romeo and the Haas, but 23.064 was the gap to Guan Yu Zhou from Charles Leclerc. 32.574 seconds was the gap from Leclerc to Schumacher. So, okay, there's about 9 seconds between them, but they were closer than not to each other throughout the majority of the day. So that's pretty cool. I like that. P12 for Lance Stroll in the first of the Aston Martins, and P13 for Alexander Albon in the first of the Williams, his first drive for that team. 14th and 15th, the 2 McLarens finish line astern, only 2 seconds between them. Daniel Ricciardo in 14th and Lando Norris in 15th. No points, of course, today for McLaren, and what has happened to that team? We don't know. They'd better figure it out really quick, because they won a Grand Prix last year, and they were pretty strong, fighting for P3 throughout the balance of the year. They need to be back up there real quick. P16 for Nicolas Latifi in the second of the Williams. He is 61.795 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. And then P17 for Nico Hülkenberg. Not a great day for the German, but then again, he wasn't expecting to have any kind of day in Bahrain as late as last Wednesday. So, cool to see him back. Unfortunately, he has not had any time to get integrated into that team or integrated into that car. So, 63.829 seconds behind Charles Leclerc in P17 for Nico Hülkenberg. However, he did finish the race, whereas Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen, and Pierre Gasly did not finish. So, that's the rundown from Bahrain. The post-mortem analysis that I can come up with is Red Bull need to do their own post-mortem analysis here. What happened on both of those cars? The mode of failure appeared to be rather similar between Verstappen and Perez. However, the ways in which it manifested were a little bit different. Verstappen initially got an inkling about what was going on behind the safety car after his last pit stop. This power steering started to act a little bit strangely, and then it was a loss of power and ultimately culminating in the engine shutoff. Perez, similarly, he reported a loss of power, no issues with his steering that I know of anyway, and then an instantaneous engine shutoff. No time for the anti-stall to kick in, no time for him to pull the clutch, and it just seized, and around it went, and he was stranded. So, regardless of the final result of the failures, it resulted in both of the cars dropping out of the race. One in a dangerous position on track, and another able to return to the pit lane. So, what happened? Were they the same mode of failure? None. I'm not sure. It appeared to be, but there's no way for me to know that. However, the results were the same at the end of the day. AlphaTauri as well with that failure for Pierre Gasly. There were no major on-track incidents other than these retirements, so really clean driving from up and down the field, but we had some mechanical failures here. What happened here to those Red Bull powertrains? How much Honda is in them? How much Red Bull is in them? Where were these failures? Are we talking about something in the hydraulic system? Are we talking engine? Are we talking gearbox, diff? What are we talking about here? Because it caused one fire for Pierre Gasly, and of course an instantaneous shutdown and being stuck in gear. It caused retirement for Max Verstappen after he got some warning, and it caused a retirement and immediate stoppage for Sergio Perez after he had some warning as well. So what was this? What caused this? And is this something that can be easily remedied? Or is this something that's going to require a return to base, which is something that is not going to happen readily because the next 2 rounds of the championship take us around the world. We remain in the Middle East for the second round, and then we go to Australia for round 3. So the teams will not really get too much of a chance to return to base until we get into the run-up to round 4 of the season, where we begin the Italian leg of the championship at Imola. So what happened to Red Bull? And what's going to happen with Mercedes? All right, they had some consolation points today, finishing 3rd and 4th. However, that was due to, at least partially, attrition. That was not on pace. However, they were running. They had the reliability, so that's good. But what's going to happen when Red Bull figure out their problems? Where are Mercedes going to be? Are they going to be 5th and 6th? Or is that Haas going to be able to get up there and split the 2 Mercedes? Or that Alfa Romeo? Or that Alpine? Or even those ATs once they have those problems fixed? Who knows? And what circuits are going to suit that Mercedes well? A little bit difficult to say. Bahrain, medium to high downforce circuit. You would think that a car that's good at high-speed corners would do well here. Mercedes has historically been good in high-speed corners, and they didn't do so well here. So are they going to be really good in straight line speed and not much else? Are they going to be good at a circuit like, I don't know, Monza later on in the year or Azerbaijan? It's hard to say. But those sorts of tracks are not what comprise the balance of the season. So if they're having trouble in high-speed corners, they're going to have some trouble throughout this entire championship. So Mercedes need to get a handle on themselves as well, although they are finishing races so far and they are scoring good points. So again, it's not catastrophic for Mercedes, but it is not where they want it to be. Certainly the teams that are in the biggest trouble right now, aside from reliability concerns, of course, which we have to consider the Red Bull family in that. Both Red Bulls and one of the ATs did not finish, but Aston Martin got to figure out what's going on because they were nowhere all day long. Again, we barely saw them on television during the race. We didn't see them really in qualifying either. McLaren also pretty much nowhere. We know that the Mercedes engine teams are having some trouble. We've got, obviously, Mercedes AMG, the works team. They're in some trouble, but again, they're scoring points. But we've got McLaren with the Mercedes engines back there. What's going on? Is it engine related? Is it chassis related? Again, we need some more insight into that. McLaren probably have more insight than we do. At least I would hope that they do, but they're not willing to share that yet. And of course, Williams, they're down there. Alex Albon comprehensively outperforming Nicholas Latifi all weekend, but they're also nowhere at this point. Nowhere near the points. And again, that Williams car does not appear to be awful. It does have some stability concerns, but it does not appear to be undrivable in terms of it's got snap oversteer and inconsistent performance from one corner to the next. So the Williams can probably be up there, probably circuit dependent, but they can get there. But Latifi has got to figure out why he's having more difficulty relative to his teammate. But they'll get there, I'm sure. Same with Aston Martin. Once Sebastian Vettel gets back in there, it's a car that's more so designed around him than it would be designed around Nico Hülkenberg, and you would have to assume that Vettel would probably be higher up in the order, near his teammate who finished 12th today. But beyond that, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch how the balance of the season begins to develop here as we get into round 4, round 5 here. Really, once we get to Europe, we'll start to get more of a stabilization of the running order, and we'll really get to see where these guys are in terms of the balance of their pace on average. It's going to be real interesting to see. But for the moment, all I can say is we can bask in the glory of a Ferrari 1-2. That has not happened in a very long time, and of course Charles Leclerc and Ferrari lead the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships respectively. So it was a good day to be a Ferrari fan, to say the least, but we've got a long season to go. We have 22 races remaining, taking us all the way to how long from now? Yeah, until the 20th of November is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So we've got a long way to go. It's certainly not time to start making predictions in terms of how everything will end up yet, but very encouraging results here today. To see some new complexion to the running order and to see Ferrari back on top is definitely something that is extremely cool to see, and I hope that it's a trend that can get going here as the season unfolds. Until next time, though, I do thank you all very, very much for watching. Ferrari Man 601 saying thanks, and of course, we will see you soon.